Getting a little echo. Is that also coming through?
Right now, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, story really is since we talked last time, there's been quite a bit of rain, which has been good from a water supply perspective. You can see that most of the reservoirs are now at or above the long-term average. So quite a bit of that rain that happened in the Northeast brought those reservoir levels up. The exception being the Raritan system, which is artificially lowered right now for the construction project, but it's also above drought watch now, which is good. That's been filling slowly. I think they're keeping it right around here, where you see it now. Manasquan's a little bit low, but also in good shape. Pardon the scrolling. So the indicators look quite a bit different than the last time you've seen them. They've been improving steadily. You see improvements across precipitation, stream flow, and groundwater. Really upward trends across the board. You see we raised the central reservoir status as well as the Northeast as things have been filling. Sort of the sole thing is groundwater is still lagging a little bit in coastal South. I think we've talked about this before. The indicator wells and the geology down there, it takes a long time to drop. It also takes a long time to fill. We are seeing improvements down there, but it's a slow process.
Yeah, it's like a big sponge down here.
Yeah.
Takes a while.
Yeah, it takes a little bit, but it is moving in the right direction. This is just the alternate way of looking at some of this stuff with the pie charts, but same information. But so the story is quite a bit of rain. I'm going to zoom out a little bit on this one. So you have the 30-day on the left, you have the 90-day on the right. You can see that we've really climbed back to even or better, you know. So anything basically white and above, you have greater than average rainfall. You can see this northwestern area is on the 30-day is well ahead of things. Everywhere else is pretty good. Even this yellow area here, it's only down not quite an inch for the 30-day. And if you look over at the 90-day, it's even a little bit less. So we've gotten a lot of good precipitation in the past few days, or excuse me, the past few weeks, and that's really showing in the water supply conditions. Stream flows, you're also seeing it. Largely blue and green dots, which is a good thing there. This is the Northeast Drought Monitor. So when I run this briefing document on Monday, it's last week's. The updated version came out yesterday. It's not much different. I'm going to zoom in. I'm not sure how the quality will come through. Basically, they shrunk a little bit of this this area down in southern New Jersey. So all of this yellow that you see has sort of shrunk in a little bit, and I believe some of the tan shrunk and became yellow, but it wasn't. They didn't, you know, change the state entirely, but also moving in the right direction. Here's your reservoirs. So combined Northeast, you see it's ticked up quite a bit the past few weeks. It's looking good. Same with Wanacue. And you have the same story at Hackensack, you know, which fills quickly. So you really see the big bump after those big storms. And the Raritan system is chugging along where we have the construction project going on. Reduce slightly for the next one. Flash drought. We're not seeing any potential for flash drought right now, which kind of goes without saying, but that's a good thing. And the precipitation forecast for this week was anywhere from 1/4 inch to an inch of rain. I think that's largely been realized in the last night and today. This is a morning CoCoRaHS total, so these are estimates, but you can see there's about, it looks to be about 1/4 inch to an inch, depending on where you're at across the state. So that's good. It's nice when the precipitation forecast comes through. That's always a good thing. And let's see what else we have. So the 8 to 14 day forecast for precipitation looks to be slightly above normal. For temperature, about normal. Hopefully that holds true. And then DRBC, the New York City, Delaware River Basin reservoirs, they're still in excellent shape. They've been doing well throughout. And the salt line is in a good spot. So normally it would be at river mile 70. It's actually further down. It's at river mile 68 right now. So that's the report. I'll also note that the indicators do not take into account last weekend's rains. So we'll see more improvement this week as well.
Okay, thanks, Kent.
No problem.
I guess legislation and regulation updates, unless somebody had a question on the current water supply. Sorry. All right. Do we have, is that going to be Brandon?
Yeah, I'll hop in on that one. Morning, everyone. A little bit of activity in the legislative front, especially the last couple of weeks with the budget process getting done. So kind of three main buckets of things. Two bills did get signed into law recently. One just happened yesterday, and that was S3444. And that's the bill that lets to summarize, drinking water treatment systems to be installed on lands that might have been preserved for green acres. I know there was a handful of cases where that was kind of put some systems in tight spot. So the governor did approve that one. So most of that handling is outside of the water supply program itself. I think it's with the WLM program right now. But that's something that will come down since it's been approved. The other one is S1727. And that's the bill that designated Franklinite as the official state mineral of New Jersey, which the governor did approve this past week. So I know there's going to be the Geologic Survey has some communications that they're going to be doing to kind of help emphasize that, because that's kind of a big deal geologically. So that one's been due for a long time. A couple other bills did move as well.
They're having some fun on social media with that too. So if you want to follow them.
So a couple bills did move, that, although they're still kind of in the legislature. This S3179, this basically is a couple extra considerations when it comes to public notice for PFAS, as well as some work for DEP as far as public outreach goes. That one did pass the assembly, so it's still with the Senate for them to deliberate on. And the other one with a similar status is this S3283, and that basically got merged with S3282 and basically puts a few assignments on DEP and BPU to do additional study on microplastics. There's some analytical stuff that goes with that. So that again passed the assembly, but it's with the Senate for their deliberation now. And then the last couple of notes, this package of three bills just got introduced but not posted on the website yet, so I don't really have any clarity as to what they are. Two of them relate to Legionella, one for community water systems, the other is for building owners, and then this third one is about taxation of publicly owned property for water supply. I'm really not sure what that one could touch on. They haven't been posted yet, so I can't really say what they are about more detail than that. And then, of course, the budget did pass. There wasn't really anything new on water infrastructure the way there was last year with that big injunction of ARP money, but you never know what's going to happen for the next fiscal year. Any questions on this set of changes? Or
hey, Brandon, this is Howard.
Hey.
If you go back to the bill that allows facilities to be built on green acres property.
Yeah.
In your description, it said municipal systems. Is that accurate? I mean, is there a distinction in the legislation between investor-owned water utilities and municipally owned systems?
Most people will use.
Yeah, so it does stick with municipal-owned systems. I think the reasoning for that is that when you have green acres property, it's usually not given out to privately held systems, like investor-owned systems. It would be like a municipality that owns the land that has been encumbered by green acres money.
So it's
Um,
like a park, for example, that's in the Green Acres
Yeah,
program
like
or something like that.
I don't know if
Okay.
there's any situations where an
Okay.
investor owned would have a Green Acres property, though. Of course, I'm not an expert on Green Acres, so I don't want to.
We have quite a few.
Yeah, Don, you have some, right?
Yeah, we've been tracking this bill, and we asked that same question and did not receive a response. So we'll have to follow up on that.
Can I ask a question?
Who was that?
Who's that?
Tim Eustace,
Okay.
North Jersey. I wonder if we could have a concerted effort to talk to legislators about the perfluoral legislation and the microplastics, since most of our water does not go to the kitchen sink. Most of it goes to lawns and agriculture, that we try and make a local effort for in-home systems, as opposed to the hundreds of millions of dollars it will cost to take these compounds out of all of the water.
The raise hand function doesn't seem to be working for me, so I just want to jump in. I think
Go ahead, Jen.
there would be some concern about that. I understand the financial implications there, but if we're using water for lawns and then it's running off and going back into the system, that's kind of perpetuating the cycle of microplastics and the perfluorinated in the larger environment. So I think that there would need to be a conversation about that and the impacts.
Good point, Jen. Thanks.
I was going to say the microplastics. I know AWWA, the New Jersey section, and probably AEA was trying to give more time to do the background work that's needed on the microplastics. So I think there was a little bit of movement in the bills where they changed a couple things, but I think that's really going over to the Drinking Water Institute for review. And
Yeah, Steve,
comment,
it looks like
so-
that last. I just saw like they put in an updated version pretty recently on the microplastic one. I did seem to build out the timelines a little bit more. The first bill was pretty aggressive timing wise. This one gives a little bit more wiggle room for.
Yeah, we had
agencies
asked for
to
more
work.
time, but we got a little bit of an extension, but
Yeah.
not quite what we had asked for. But
And
I think with the Drinking Water Quality Institute, obviously, there might be some chances there to, put some more input in too. So you might want to consider about when they meet and raising your concerns that way too. So. Anything else for legislation or regulation? Or well, we didn't do regulation yet, but anything on legislation? Okay, Brandon, you
Okay.
want to do regulation then?
shift over. Okay. I'd say short answer, not a lot of changes since the last time we met. And well, I know it's been a little bit since the last public meeting. The EJ rules got adopted back in April. The inland flood protection rules did get formally published and adopted this past week. I mean, it was announced they were going to be adopted a little while ago, but now that's actually in effect. So again, most of that isn't our program per se in water supply, but that does touch a lot of different permits if you have to go to the Department for a Land Use Permit. The other ones that tend to be pertinent, the license operator regs, still working on getting some stakeholdering done there. Asset management and lead and copper rules are in legal review, so we're still hoping to get those out sooner than later, but those just have to go through the process. And 7.9b, that's still hopefully that'll get adopted soon, but it's not quite published yet for adoption. That 7.9b for surface water quality standards. And the
Brandon,
allocation rules are still in redevelopment, but that's ongoing. Sorry.
Brandon, on the asset management rules, is there a draft of that that's public at all?
Not yet. Once it does get proposed, then that would go out. But the department usually doesn't at least our program doesn't usually put out rule text before it's before a proposal is published.
I was just trying to follow up. So Don and I are on another little committee that does asset management. So I
Mhm.
just thought I'd bring that up. So Don, you can remind me too when public comment comes out for that then. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll let this group know too, because
no, I know. I'm just kind of teasing a little bit. So, all right. Any other questions on regulations?
Yeah, I have one for Brandon. What is the agricultural rule? What is that about?
so that's the water allocations ag certs basically. So like farmers have their own kind of special category of water diversion privileges, separate from the typical water allocation rules. So no real changes forthcoming on that particular set of rules. But the regular suite of water allocation permit rules are still kind of, there's like an internal work group that's trying to update those. But as far as I know, we're not looking at ag rules at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for regulations? All right. Thank you, Brandon.
Yep. Thanks.
I guess, Kent, do you want to give us a update, a brief update on the chapter status for the water
Sure.
supply plan?
Absolutely. Let me share my screen again. So is that popping up there?
Yep.
No, we just wanted to update everybody and show them where the chapters are at. This is what we think is going to be the final, sort of table of contents. And then what I'll do is I'll just talk about each one just a little bit. So I put the link to our current website for this plan in there as well for everyone. Just so you know, most of the content that's gone into these chapters, particularly 1 through 8, has already been shown in either stakeholder meetings or through the council public meetings, but a lot of it's up there. So I encourage you to go look and dig through there. And also there's a function for more public comment. So if you see something, you want to tell us about it, please use that website. We invite feedback and we are collecting it actively. So basically, we're in pretty good shape. The overall is that chapters 1 through 8 have been drafted and they are sent upstairs. They're with our chain of command for management review. The executive summary, we have a framework for it, but that's really going to come at the end. So I would say that's underway, but that's going to be completed at the end. And then chapter 9, we've roughed out a nice outline that's with our chain of command for approval, and then that's underway. We'll start drafting that probably next week is the plan. So the bulk of the plan is drafted and it's moving forward. We're going to get some management review. I think Steve talked with council last time about after we go through our internal chain of command process, it'd probably come to council for them to see. Simultaneously, it'll go to our editor who's going to compile it into the final product, and then it's going to end up in we'll put it out to draft for the public, and we'll do a couple public meetings on it as well. In addition to these chapters that you see here, there's numerous appendices. I'm just going to scroll down. These are pretty much complete as well. I think currently we are working on drafting or refining 1 or 2 of them, but by the large story is that that's pretty much done as far as drafting as well. So we're in a good spot. We got to keep our foot on the gas pedal, moving it forward, getting our internal approval process completed, and then we can get it out there. Any questions from council on that?
We have a timeline at this point. Rough timeline.
Yeah.
As to when we think this is going to happen.
So our internal timeline is it's probably going to be hopefully, so the hope is that it's through our internal review process here in early September. So that's probably when council would see it.
So there may be a possibility at our September meeting that we might get a peek at this then?
There's a possibility of that, yes.
Okay.
That is my
But
hope.
hopefully by October. So.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, Kent, thanks.
No problem.
All right, I guess we're ready for the presentation or
Yes.
demonstration?
So Dan Hoy is going to do that for us today. He's authored and built this product, which is a map-based interface that'll allow members of the public just to obtain some water use data in an aggregated format. So I'm gonna let him take it away, but we're pretty excited about it. And I think it has future applications for, once we're done with the plan, putting further content into something like a dashboard or a storybook. So with that, Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Kent, for the introduction. I should note I've had a lot of support and help from other folks at DEP, including BGIS, and folks in our own section at the survey. So not just me putting this thing together, but thank you, Kent. I'm going to share my screen. We're just going to do a couple quick intro slides to provide a little bit of context, but we'll spend most of our time doing a live walkthrough. Cross your fingers that our technology holds up. So let's just make sure you can see this. Those slides coming through okay?
Yeah, it looks good.
Excellent. Okay, so today we'll be looking at the New Jersey Water Withdrawal Data Summary Viewer. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's relatively simple in terms of what it does. The goal is to display and share water withdrawal data. So some of you may be familiar with NJ Water. That's the database that we use to organize and store that data. Withdrawals are categorized by their use group and resource type. So that allows for folks to kind of digest that information with that context. Geographically, the data is summarized by municipality and or HUC 14. Important to note there, no locational information more detailed than those boundaries is shared with this product. There are no points on the map, so there's no fear that information could become public. In general, the purpose here is that this serves as a public-facing component of our water supply plan update, and it supports the sharing of water supply-related data with the public. We've done this in the past, primarily via DGS 10.3. That is a Microsoft Access database format. It's still in existence. It's still available. The link to it actually lives on this dashboard product that we'll see in a moment. However, our hope is that the ArcGIS Online version, this new version, is a little bit easier to access than the Access database, and it provides some spatial context and allows for some customization in terms of the data that can be downloaded and then manipulated by the user. So hopefully it makes things a little bit simpler and more user-friendly. All right, so we're going to flip over to the demo. In case you're one of those folks that likes to follow along and click along as we go, I just dropped the link in the chat. If you go to that link, you can open up the map on your own screen, or you can just follow along with the one that I'll be manipulating here. This is kind of the home page, and this is where the link will take you. From here, you'll be able to view. You and members of the public would not have the edit function. That's because I serve as one of the creators and editors of the product. But it provides a little bit of background, a bit of metadata here, and also just some of the boilerplate ArcGIS Online stuff. When we view, as you see with many of these online products, it starts with a splash screen. This one's a little dense compared to your typical splash screen. So the reason for that is because there is a fair amount of information that's stored in the map, and the idea is that the screen gives you a little startup intro if you need it before using it. A little bit of a description of the data that's in the map and kind of how to manipulate it here, as well as a link to our supply plan website and some more detailed metadata as well. Just worth noting, once you click all that information, because it is quite a bit, it's still stored over here, but it's just kind of hidden in this little slider menu on the left.
Can I pause you for 1 second and just suggest that you maybe just turn off your camera feed? because
Okay. Is
your
the
audio
a
went
little
out for
choppy?
me a couple times there. Yeah, yeah. So that might help.
Okay. Thank you. Does this sound a little better, a little cleaner?
It does.
Okay. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks.
So just to walk it back a little bit, once we close that splash screen with the information, it can still be accessed. It just lives over here and can be slid out of the way so that the map can be viewed. Okay, so there is a little bit of reference data included in the map, counties, drought regions. Those are things that don't have any data stored or connected to them, but they're useful for context. Many of you have probably seen an ArcGIS Online product, but if you hadn't, you get this kind of built-in toolbar. One of the options is layers, and that allows you to essentially toggle on and off the data, the spatial data that's displayed in the map. So we're going to go ahead and turn off the reference data, the counties and the drought regions, and we're going to start digging into the data a little bit. So we'll turn on municipalities to start. Before we start manipulating the map, I want to direct your attention to the charts down here at the bottom. This is kind of the visual aspect of that water use data that we get right off the bat. Each of these charts is showing millions of gallons per year. The first is organized by use groups. You can manipulate and slide this to only look at certain years if you were only interested in a few. And then in that chart is repeated with resource type instead of use group. So the totals would add up and be the same between those two charts you just visualized. Okay, so that's what we see on the bottom. Now within the map, we've turned on municipalities. We're going to zoom in. So this is where we hope that folks will be able to use this data, manipulate it, and just kind of gain a little bit of insight. If you click on a municipality, so we'll click on Lakewood Township here, you get a pop-up that shows some kind of basic municipality information in terms of the population. And maybe you also noticed our chart at the bottom has changed. It now reflects our water use data just for Lakewood Township. So we're looking at the use groups there. We can also flip to the resource type chart, which has also changed to reflect the resource types used by Lakewood Township. So that's really, kind of the heart of what you're able to do here in terms of manipulating it. It's also possible, I'm going to close this pop-up, to select more than one township. So if you were interested in a broader geographical area, you selected multiple townships, that same selection will be reflected in your chart down at the bottom. And if you get lost, over here on the right, you can see what municipalities that you have selected. Okay, we're going to hit the X to clear that. You can also simply click off on a different part of the map and your selection will clear. All the things you just saw can also be done via HUC 14. So if the interest is more in watersheds rather than municipalities, just a reminder, these are hydrologic units. They're not officially watersheds because they don't have to, they're not drawn in quite the same way, but they do reflect more of that watershed-based information. Once again, you can select more than one at a time. So if we have a few watersheds that we're interested in, we will then see their use groups and or resource types reflected in the charts at the bottom. So hopefully folks are able to manipulate the map, look at areas of interest, and kind of zoom in on that. In some places, so we see this with Lakewood, use is really dominated by a single group. So we're going to see in this one mostly potable supply, but perhaps you have more interest in non-agricultural irrigation. So there are filters along the top. We can go to our municipality use group filter and we can select everything but potable supply. And so we'll cut that category out. Or we could simply select that irrigation value and just get those numbers on a year-to-year basis. So you are able to use those filters to kind of wipe out a category if it is dominating the chart. All right. Now, one of the last pieces that I think really is going to be useful here for folks that want to take this data and do a little bit more manipulation, perhaps members of the public, students, etc. Once you have selected your location, you can then download that data in CSV form, and the download will reflect whatever municipality or HUC 14 that you have selected. So these tabs that are nested under the map, we're going to go to municipality use group data. And this now reflects our selection. We will only see entries for Lakewood Township and the associated data. This tiny little icon that's almost invisible to the user here, unfortunately, it can't be blown up or changed. That's a stock item in the ArcGIS Online toolkit. But if we hit that download button, we cross our fingers and hope that it works. There we go. We'll get a CSV that will then reflect that data that we have selected. So this is somewhat similar to the functionality that you would get from the Access product, the DGS 10.3, except for the fact that you're able to, with the map, customize what you're looking at. So now we see the CSV we get. This is just a sort of mapping artifact, so we'll delete that for simplicity's sake. And now you're seeing what your download would look like. So it's all Lakewood Township numbers. If we wanted to, we could filter to only look at potable supply. And then you can see we get our potable supply sum of volumes for that 1990 to 2020 period of record. And from there, the data is yours to do with what you will. This same function could be carried out with multiple municipalities, wouldn't have to be just one. And again, the same function can be HUC 14 based, watershed based instead of municipality. We have one little wrap up slide before I go. Any questions? Anyone want to look at a certain thing on the map or tool?
Yeah, and there was one question in the chat just asking how we decided on which municipalities will be included. I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think we just tried to include all municipalities throughout New Jersey.
That's right. That's right. We did collect all. And we had, that's one that'll have to be maintained and updated. Of course, there is some small, changes with that. I think we already had one from the time we began developing this till now. 2 municipalities had merged. And that is now reflected in the map. So yes, it's every municipality, and we'll do what we can to keep that updated. Bob, I think you have your hand up. You have one for us.
Yes, is this database going to be integrated with water availability? In other words, if we were looking at Lakewood and we wanted to know if they're confined or unconfined wells, were exceeding or below the low flow margin or whatever confined aquifer threshold you come up with?
That's a good question. So this product itself does not do that, but you certainly could work to connect the dots on your own. I mean, you see here that we've got Lakewood. Most of its use is unconfined, or a good chunk of the use. So that would fall under the purview of that low flow margin method. So you'd have to do that on your own, Bob, but you could kind of work together with that. Obviously, the water withdrawal data at its base, it comes from the same source, but it doesn't have that functionality within the tool. Does that answer your question?
I think,
that part does, but what is the department doing with this data? In other words, if a particular town was exceeding the low flow margin,
so
isn't the
I'll
department
just
going to be coming up with alternatives for that particular town?
Bob, this is the NJ water data that's been feeding into the plan that we're always using, and also has fed into the low flow margin estimates and whatnot that we've been conducting for this plan. I think what you're talking about with respect to taking what you see here and moving towards that in terms of a digital output is something that could be done. It's probably a big jump. Basically, what we did here is we took the way we put the data that we push out to the public now via our DGS file, and this is kind of like a proof of concept for how to get into a more map-based interface. So there's probably a lot of ways we can go from here, one of which could be something like you're proposing.
I'm lost. Isn't this plan going to be looking at water demand and water availability to determine where you have deficits and surpluses?
Yes, and it does. And this is some of the data. This is a part of the data that goes into that.
So there'll be a chapter that a user could evaluate to see which particular larger withdrawals are causing deficits or allowing for surpluses.
So this is a separate product from the plan. This is just another way for the public to access water withdrawal data. So that might be some of the confusion here, but what you're talking about, that sort of content where we speak to those situations, is in the plan.
In a quantifiable perspective?
Yes.
Okay. And that would be from 2020 to 2050.
That would be the projected side of things.
If a particular large withdrawal has a surplus in 2020, but in 2035 it's going to exceed that surplus and then run a deficit, will the plan point that out?
The plan will be speaking to certain HUCs, right? Like the low flow margin does, where there's possible deficits. We're not going to, I don't think we speak to specific withdrawals.
Okay.
I see a couple more good questions in the chat. Pam, is use of a certain browser recommended for full functionality? I've used it in Edge and Chrome and have not had any issues. I wouldn't rule out there might be a browser out there where it doesn't work quite as well. In general, for ArcGIS Online, I recommend Google Chrome. It seems to work pretty effectively. Jim, how often is the data updated? This is a new product for us, and like Kent said, a proof of concept. In general, our hope is to update it around the same regularity as the NJ Water, that database. So not every week, but also more frequently, certainly, than every water supply plan. So hopefully this is a living product that we can continue to dive into and update our data references and keep it fresh. One more very good question. Assuming you can select by county or region. So that reference data can be selected, but our withdrawal data is not summarized by county or by region. So what you could do, right now we have our municipalities on. If we were to turn on our county boundaries, let's do our drought regions. So, it'd be something that you'd have to do manually, but you could use the select tool to say, okay, I want to grab every one of the municipalities within a drought region. It could be done if you shift click and kind of grab through each one of these municipalities. You could do it, but worth noting, the data itself is not summarized by county or drought region. In this product, it's just summarized by municipality and by HUC 14. So just to wrap things up, just to summarize, this tool displays and supports the download of use data as a part of our water supply plan rollout. And Kent touched on this at the beginning. We are already considering some next steps. We kind of like the functionality and the possibilities associated with these ArcGIS Online platforms. A simple one would be to recreate the product for discharge data. That's data that we have that we could decide to produce something similar for. And a little bit more vague, but kind of a bigger idea is the development of some other mapped products to augment our water supply plan update. We'll see where that goes, but we like the way that these maps and dashboards function, and think it could be a useful way to share some more data. Would love some feedback from you all. You know, specifically if you can think of other water supply plan topics that you think might be useful to visualize in a similar format. So if there's something else you've been focused on in the process of this plan update, and you think it would be valuable to see it in this type of format, please send me your ideas. I mean, you can share them now or throw them in the chat. I also put my email on here if you'd like to play around with the tool a little bit, and then later share your ideas.
Any questions by any of the board members, committee members?
No, just thank you for walking through that. I think it looks like it's really easy to use and could be potentially interesting. I am interested in, future data updates like Bob was talking about so that we can, work both sides of the equation, if you will. But this looks really interesting. Thank you.
Dave, Specca? Dave, I think you're muted maybe.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Jen said and say that this looks like a really useful tool and something that we can get a lot from. Just out of curiosity, maybe it can, but like if you were to look at agriculture use within a region, does it break it out by the source of the water as well, or is that something that is not in there at this point?
Good question. So the filters operate separately. So you certainly could filter by each of those if we turn our drought regions off. If we select Lakewood again, we can filter our resource types, and we can filter use group down to just agriculture, but they aren't tied together, which I think is what you're asking about. So we can't break these columns further down in order to do that. So good thought. Yeah, those things are.
You give us a good product and we end up asking for the moon in the sky, so sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. These are good ideas. And, sometimes I've been staring at this thing in my own cubicle for months, so it helps to get some different ideas and some different eyes on it. So no, thank you, Dave. That's a great idea.
Okay, any other council members have anything? Okay, Bob?
Yes, will the data show summer demand?
This data is
annual demand, but I don't see summer demand so far.
Right. This data is all summed annually, so it doesn't have any seasonality to it. But again, we'll add that to the good list of suggestions here. That's a good thought.
Okay. Any other comments? I think I see another one.
Yeah, if I missed anything in the chat, you don't hesitate to shoot me an email on down the road here. Much appreciated.
All right. All right, do you want to do subcommittee updates then?
Sure. Actually, I don't think we have any subcommittee updates today, so it's pretty quick and easy.
Before we go, I think I saw Kareem joined us. Does that give us a quorum then?
Yes, it does.
And
is Kareem there?
I thought I saw his name. So.
Yep, I do see him there. Hi, Kareem. How are you? So that gives us 6. So we have a quorum if you want to knock out those minutes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say before we move on. So going back to the minutes, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from March of this year?
So moved.
Okay, I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any questions or concerns on the minutes other than what we previously noted? All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so moved.
Thank you.
Speaking of the minutes and subcommittees, I'll use that as my segue. At the last, in the minutes, we had a little sidebar about the Legionella. And I know Don Shields and Chris Andreessen expressed some interest in maybe meeting with somebody from DEP to talk about that a little bit more. So I don't believe we've done anything on that, but maybe that's something after the fact that we can see if we can develop that a little bit more if need be. So
I did see that actually. I don't know if I was at that meeting, but it looked like you were all going to maybe meet at a conference or something like that. But if that didn't happen and you need help,
that
sort
probably
of
didn't
getting
happen. No.
Yeah, well, if you need help getting that meeting together, just say a word. I'll try to set something up.
Yeah, can't
Right.
that be helpful?
And so it's Steve and Don. Is there anybody else involved that I should look to?
Chris Andreessen?
Chris, okay. And DEP, okay.
I don't know if
do
there's
that.
any other water suppliers out there that might want to be part of that, but
Yeah. Any other council members too? You know.
that's the only thing I had. So I just threw my 2 cents in. So
What should I look for something in August, or is that too soon, or what do you guys think?
I think August is fine.
yeah, you can give it a shot. We can come up with something. So
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
all right. So I guess we're down to item 9 on the agenda, future council meetings and other meeting updates. So I guess our next meeting is scheduled for August 18th. We may or may not have enough information to have a public session by then, but we'll let you know. And we'll also let you know if we just need a council only meeting for whatever reason. So just mark that on your calendar. The other ones are noted and we'll go from there. Any other meeting updates that anybody has?
I just had one. Jen had reached out with a meeting idea for the future, talk about microplastics. So I want to let Jen sort of speak to that, as well as council members. Keep in mind if you have any thoughts and things as we sort of are getting out of some of the pithy water supply plan stuff that you want to talk about. Feel free to pulse me with those ideas. Jen, I don't know if you want to say anything about.
Yeah, the idea was really that I hate to call plastics an emerging contaminant because it's emerged at this point, but there is a lot of legislation that's moving forward and a lot of conversation about microplastics. So if we wanted to bring in some of the speakers, there's a lot of research being done at Rutgers and other places about the prevalence of microplastics in our systems and the impacts. And if we could have a conversation about that, I think that might be of interest.
Okay, so that'll be a topic for a future meeting.
Yeah, if the council is interested in it, I think that would be great.
I think we talked about that, when these things came up, and so, that could be a longer term impact on some of the supply theoretically. So if we have a speaker or speakers that we can get, that would be worthwhile, I think, for us to hear about that. I think we're all in agreement on that. So
great.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Any
Thanks for
other?
keeping track of that, Kent.
What's that?
Any other meetings?
Thanks for keeping track of that. I
Yeah, I didn't
got that
forget.
email off and there it went. And
I'm always looking for topics.
So thank you.
All right. I guess we're down to number 10 then. Any new publications?
So I'll welcome Alex Fior from USGS. This is where USGS usually chimes in. Alex, if you're there, anything you'd like to bring up?
Yes. We have a few new publications. One of them that might be of interest that's got a lot of media attention in the past few weeks since it's come out. There was a USGS study by us in New Jersey on PFAS occurrence in tap water at the point of use. So this would be tap water and from public supply sources and private well sources sampled at the point of use without use of any kind of treatment on it. And they looked at it across the entire US, and they're estimating that based on all of the data, just of what they collected, that 46% of all tap water is likely contain at least one PFAS at high levels. And that median concentration of cumulative PFAS is about the same everywhere in all tap water systems across the country. So I'll put this one in the chat here. Actually, this is in the Journal of Environment International, where that study was done by Kelly Smalling of the USGS.
Thank you.
And there was also another report about flood inundation. Maybe this is not as much water supply, but it might be of interest. Simulating flood inundation under various tropical storm events along the coast of New Jersey, trying to see what would be impacted both in terms of infrastructure as well as in the shallow aquifer environments as well. That one is a USGS report, but also put in the chat. Those are the two notable ones.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. I think I've heard about the first one. So, any other items for new publications from anyone? So, public comments. I know Paul, sure, you had your hand up. Did you have something you wanted to ask?
Thank you. I did put into chat, I would call it an update from NJIT and the course that I'm instructing on water resource engineering. It focused on, and perhaps this is a question also, how does the availability of water include the concepts of what is going on in Northeast New Jersey, where pumping and redistribution through interconnections is the critical factor in terms of municipal water availability. So the update that I provided was perhaps lengthy, but I think we'd like to be able to do this because the students are probably as interested in water resources as they are in anything. And in this case, we were benefited by having a number of surveying students who actually helped in doing the surveys of the stream bottom between the confluence and the intake, which data is rarely looked at. So we think we made a contribution to the source of information on the utility of the pumping station, or at least on some of the basics. And obviously we have to wait for Dr. Marhaba's approval before we release any report on that. And would also be anxious is the word, perhaps, to make sure that this information gets questioned and queried and peer reviewed by purveyors and the state. That's anything that you can do to help in evaluating that information when we do have a final report. That would be excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say, Paul, once you have a final report, and Dr. Tejada, that would be something that we could mention to Kent and Steve Domber, and if that's something that we can fit in, and it makes sense to put in like as a presentation like we had earlier, we could definitely take a look at that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Any other public comments at this time? Okay, I don't see any or hear any. So thanks everyone for attending today. Have a great weekend, and we'll look to possibly see you in August. If not, if anything else comes up, we'll let you know. All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
All right,
Steve.
sir.
Well,
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks.